Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast, the go-to place to gain financial freedom through real estate investing. Here we interview investors, mentors, and entrepreneurs who share their secrets and advice to help you build passive income. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, this is Augustino. As real estate entrepreneurs, we're building our portfolios of assets not only for the cash flow, but also for financial freedom. The thing is, to obtain true financial freedom, we need to put scalable systems in place to help us build our portfolios and get them to throw off cash without our daily intervention. Running your properties is extremely important to the success as an asset manager. Today's guest has built a portfolio of his own and understood the importance of running a deal right. From his experience, he developed the VIP model, the Vision Infrastructure Process Model, a scalable business framework. Using this model, he shows you how to control your calendar, rediscover time instead of killing it. All of this is covered in his new book, The Time Wealthy Investor, which was just hard launched yesterday and is already an Amazon bestseller in the real estate category. Aside from that, he is the CEO of Landlord Coach based out of Lafayette, Indiana, where he mentors landlords and property managers on how to maximize their time. Now, with all that, I'd like to welcome Mark Dolfini to the show. Hey, Mark, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
It's so good to be here. Thanks so much.
Before we go on, if you like what Mark has to say, you can reach him at his website at landlordcoach.com or on Facebook at My Landlord Coach. So go ahead and find him there. So, okay, Mark, maybe go ahead and tell listeners what you're up to.
Well, a little bit of selling books right now. That's what seems to be the biggest thing. I was in Vegas last week helping to promote the book and then had the hard launch yesterday. And just to be clear, it is that there is an original the Time Wealthy Investor, but this is the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0. So it really is a lot more in alignment with how I coach and how I teach in the classes.
Well, I've listened to it. It's a great book. I highly recommend it, guys. Highly recommend it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You know what? Maybe you can tell listeners about your start as like, how'd you get started in real estate?
I would love to say that it was these, this great beginning, but it was actually when I was a kid. I remember very distinctly, I was sitting in my father's lap. He's asking me what I wanted for Christmas, and we're kind of sitting there with the Sears catalog and flipping through things. And he says, "Oh, right. So what do you want for Christmas?" And I said, "I want real estate." And that's a true story. I was probably, 7 or 8 years old. And the reason I wanted real estate is because I remember like the big thing back then was to build tree forts. And I wanted my own piece of land so I could build my own tree fort on there. And it was pretty cool. I remember there was a kid who used to bully me when I was a kid. Not terrible, but just he was a bigger kid. So I just wanted to go, and that way I could go to my place, and he wasn't allowed to go there because it was my real estate.
That's right.
So I just even back then, but my first real transaction was when I was a little bit older. I was in the Marine Corps, and I was part of flight crew, so I was always gone. Didn't really have an opportunity to spend a lot of money. So I was banking a lot of money, and my first real estate transaction though was I was in my early 20s, and I bought 40 acres of land, bare land, down in northern Arizona, and it was like for maybe $125 an acre or something ridiculously cheap. So I knew that it was just as a buy and hold strategy. That was just something that I just knew I was going to make money on, and even if I just wanted to hold on to it, I could. But that was my first real estate transaction.
Nice. Very good. Very good.
Thanks. So where I got longer into the start, though, is when I got out of the Marine Corps and I came to Lafayette, Indiana. And that's when I really started my real estate career.
Yes. So now what's the story behind the book then? Like, why'd you write it? What happened to you that really saw the need for this book and to help others?
That's a great question. I've always enjoyed being my own boss, doing my own thing, right? Just being creative, and that just really seemed to resonate well with me in real estate. But the reason I wrote the book is because I would love to say that my climb up the real estate ladder and for success has been a straight line, but it was far from that. So as you start to climb up the ladder and you start realizing, oh man, this is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. When we leave high school, we're all ready to be billionaires, right? And it doesn't quite happen that way. The world just doesn't come and hand us a bunch of money because we feel entitled to it. So after my wake up call, the biggest thing that happened for me was back in 08 and 09 when I had built up a $6 million real estate portfolio pretty much through just sheer grit. And I had 92 rental units by myself. but it was completely by myself. And when that fell apart back in 08 and 09, and I lost about $4.5 million in real estate pretty much overnight, that wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it is when I almost died from working myself to death. And I came down with double pneumonia because I was working 22-hour days, trying to catch sleep wherever I could, falling asleep in the Lowe's parking lot, just trying to grab a nap here or there. But that lifestyle, that hustle was not a lifestyle that was suiting me well. So when I finally, after I'm laying in a hospital bed for 3 days and on the brink of losing $4.5 million worth of the real estate portfolio that, this $6 million portfolio, I realized that something had to be different. And I did climb out of that hole. And after I climbed out of that hole, now I oversee about 250 units, and I work, instead of 22-hour days, I work 2-hour weeks. And I felt that message was important for people to hear. I think it's important for people to understand that they can't spend all of their time hustling. They can't spend all their time working, and that there's no amount of money in the world that will make time irrelevant. So that was important for me to get that story out there and tell people how to run this right.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that there's a lot of talk on many YouTube channels about hustle and grind and, go as hard as you can. I work 19-hour days, all that fun stuff. And, yes, I hustle and I grind, but there's also something to say to actually spending time with those you love and really enjoying life. That is why we're still doing this, right? I mean, ultimately, we're trying to build financial freedom so we don't have to worry about getting that paycheck. But at the same time, too, if you're not even alive to spend the paycheck,
right,
that's a whole other issue.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, so I can guarantee you, people did not get into the real estate business, to get away from their job or whatever it was. They didn't get into this business to create another job for themselves.
Correct.
They didn't get into this business to say, what I really want to do? I want to spend all my free time away from my friends and family and doing the things that I care about, right? No one ever says that. And if they say that, I would question, well, you're a sociopath. Why would you want to do that? I mean, because the whole point is you want a better life. Now, what that better life translates to, often they think, is money. They go, oh, well, I want 100 units because this is going to give me the life output that I think that I'm going to get. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. They think that it's a fool's errand because they start focusing on the wrong target. They start focusing on that 100 units rather than saying, I want to spend an extra 10 hours a week with my children. I want to help build or be part of a community center that is going to help adults learn how to read. Or I want to be able to have the time wealth to go away for 2 months on a mission trip and help dig wells in Haiti or something like that. Now, I know that sounds really, maybe a little bit too much for the people out there, but I can guarantee you, I don't want to say never. It is rare when I run across a real estate investor that doesn't have aspirations of doing something better for the world, for their world. And if their world is, homeschooling their kids or doing something decent in the world, it's just rare. It's just rare that I don't find that. And that's why most people want time wealth, is to go do things and not be pigeonholed by a job description. What are you? I'm a real estate investor. No, you're not. You're a human being that was put on this planet to not toil, to go do things that are much bigger than what you're seeing right now. And it's not to own 100 rental units. I promise you that. Yeah.
That's right. And I think that's many people get caught up with that. They get caught up with owning number of units as opposed to what do you plan on doing with it. That's ultimately what you're saying.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So the book is centered around the VIP process model. Maybe you can describe what is the vision infrastructure process model and why is it important?
Yeah, it's a good question. The VIP paradigm, it's about setting up a life output model. And it starts with vision. And vision is really where you want to go. That is the pot of gold of the end rainbow for you. So if you're saying, okay, well, I want 100 rental units. Well, that's not a vision. That's maybe a goal on the way, but a vision is going to be something more visceral. It's going to be something that is like, when you think about it, when you think about your vision, it really should conjure an emotional response within you. Like, you almost should start to feel tingling in your hands, that butterflies in your stomach, that, man, that really winds my clock. And it's a necessary to get that deep on your vision. And most people don't. They don't have a good vision for their future. I mean, even myself, it's hard for me to come up with my own vision for my future because even though I coach this to many, many people, I would have trouble voicing my own vision because it's part of the limbic system that is really, it doesn't have a capacity for language. It's like me asking you, why do you love your grandmother? And you may come up with some really nice platitudes and say, oh, she's a sweet little old lady. She's this, she's that. Okay, that's great. But why do you love your grandmother? And after you start peeling that back, you go, it's just the way she makes me feel. She's just so kind. And she always greets me at the door with X. But even then, you still have to say, but why do you love your grandmother? Right? That's why vision is hard to do, because vision, it should be deep in your limbic system where it's going to emote that visceral response within you to say, yes, I really, really deeply believe that I want to spend as much time with my children as I can because I didn't get that as a kid. Both my parents worked 18-hour days and I got to spend very little time with them. I didn't get to know, or whatever that answer is for you. So that's why I say when you can start to get there, and it's hard to do by yourself. I mean, I would almost say it's impossible to do by yourself. It's like trying to put sunscreen on your own back. You can kind of do it, right? But you're going to miss spots and you're going to get a weird tan. But that's the thing, when you have someone that's going to coach you through that process, then you can get to the real meat and potatoes of what this is all for. And I promise you, it's not 100 rental units or 10 rental units or whatever. It's something much more visceral. And that's the reason you'd get out of bed on a rainy Sunday. And that's why that was my purpose for writing the Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, because when I wrote that, I felt there were so many people that were aiming at the wrong target. And I was one of them. I was wanting 1,000 rental units paid free and clear and all that stuff. And I was thinking, not to say that isn't necessarily a goal that I want in the future, because I can help more and more people, but my vision is part of helping as many people as I possibly can. So for me, part of my vision is to build a large community, and community that can help one another. And it's not just me at the top, it's everybody helping row in the same direction. So that's part of my vision. So getting back to the VIP model, when you have a vision that is very, very clear, it becomes absolutely obvious to everybody around you. And there's no way anybody's ever going to challenge that. And I would say, just to give you an example of a clear vision for the future, I would argue that the most dangerous place on the planet is between a mother and her child, right?
I agree. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you would agree. You have children, you would understand.
Yeah.
That is because the mother has a very clear vision for watching her children grow up and be successful. So if anything's going to challenge that, that's a very dangerous place to be. So I say that it's somewhat abstract, but it's really not that abstract, because even still, I would probably walk alongside a mother, but I would never get in the way. Right? So that's the thing with a vision. So your vision should be that clear, should be that obvious. So once your vision is clear, then you're going to set up an infrastructure that is in alignment with that vision. And this is why I say, okay, so you're going to look at your business like a vessel. So if your vision is to get downriver, you want to build a vessel that is a canoe, might be a good vessel for that, right?
Yeah.
If your vision is to get to the top of a mountain, a canoe is not going to be a good vessel for that. So this is where I say, okay, so passive income, if your vision is to say you want to, let's make a more selfish vision that you want to spend 3 months out of the year laying on a beach somewhere in Spain, that's fine. But you have to have an infrastructure that's in alignment with that vision. So that's where passive income comes from. So when you're building that business, you want to have an infrastructure that's in alignment with that vision. Because again, if your infrastructure is going to require you to return emails and phone calls in a timely manner, that's not going to work out well for you at all if you're going to be gone for 3 months laying on a beach, right? It's just not going to be a good experience for you.
Correct.
Nor is it going to be efficient or effective, that sort of thing. So that's the infrastructure piece. So infrastructure is really like the bones of your business. It's the framework, it's the websites, the office space, even the desks and the chairs. It's all of those things that basically your property management software, your accounting software, that's the basic infrastructure of your business. It's the bones of your business. The last piece is P. That's the process. So again, we've gone from vision, infrastructure, and now we're at process. The process is basically the rules upon which you operate. And that's going to be how you implement all the infrastructure pieces that you put in place. So it's going to be, parts of your lease. It's going to be parts of your SOP and your FAQs and all of those things. It's the basic rules upon which you operate that runs on the infrastructure tracks that you built that all stays in alignment with your vision. So said another way, if the vision would be your map, infrastructure would be your train tracks, process would be the train that runs on those tracks, and that all stays in alignment with your vision for the future.
Excellent. Excellent. So, and I know in the book, you actually go through and detail some of these things down to, this is a company you can call for this specific component of your, whatever it is discussed in the VIP model, which is great. So it really helps people define it. Now, getting back to the vision part, do you find that maybe this is more of a you thing personally? Do you use affirmations, or is that something separate from vision that really helps support and keep that vision alive? Like, how do you, I guess, reinforce your vision every day to remind yourself, or do you even do that?
Absolutely. That is absolutely necessary. So the affirmations, again, writing them as if they already happened is 100% important. So I want to make sure that I make a distinction here between vision and goals, because people talk about vision board and a lot of times it just ends up being goals. This is just my truth. It's not the truth. It may be different for you, but this is how I define that. So for me, having a rock solid vision for my future is really about having, again, that visceral sort of thing like this. And you can write it down. In fact, you need to be able to write it down. You need to be able to find a voice for it. Because I said, if it's part of your limbic system, why you love something, it's hard for you to voice. But you do need to find a way to communicate that with your outer voice and with other people to say, this is my vision. So don't cop out and just say, well, it's part of the limbic system, I can't find a voice for it. No, you have to be able to find a way for it. Just like, why do you love your children? Why do you love your wife? Why do you love certain things that you enjoy? So you need to find a voice for that and a way to communicate that. But your goals are really nothing more than milestones along the way to your vision. So if you do want to have 50 rental units because it's part of your vision, because you want to build a multi-million-dollar community center in your town, okay, that makes sense. Now, I would argue that maybe you don't need to have 50 rental units to get there. But again, if you're doing it based on life output, I would probably say, okay, well, why do you do that? Now, this is a guy who's overseeing 250 units right now. So you're like, okay, pot, kettle, right? But that's part of my vision because I also employ people. And that's big for me. So that's also part of my community building. And I feel that I can be much more impactful when I can have a successful business. So that's why when you're looking at your vision, and whether you're doing a vision board or whatever that is, I would say that needs to be written down every single day, at a minimum every single day. When I coach people, and here's a plug here, when you guys are writing down your vision or your goals, the way I would do is I write your vision at the top, and it should be something that you can convey in a sentence or two. So you write your vision, and I'll give you the sample vision. So I was working with someone who, she originally came to me and she said she wanted 15 rental units. They had 8 or 9 at the time. So after I challenged her on that, and she, after a couple sessions, she realized where I was going. She came up with one that was, she wanted to make a certain amount per month. She wanted to make $32,000 per month. She wanted to quit her job. She wanted her husband to be able to quit his job. She wanted to homeschool her kids, and she wanted to move her mother to within like a 10-minute drive of their house. And finally, they wanted to have another baby. And I was thinking, man, that is such a solid vision for your future. And she was able to write that and convey that in one sentence. So she had her vision. Of course, then she had her goals along the way that would get her in alignment with that vision. So what I would suggest to people is keep a stack of blank 3x5 index cards next to your nightstand at night. And this is what you do. In the morning, and I mean before you do anything, before you go to the bathroom, unless you have a child that you need to tend to or someone you need to tend to, but this is the first thing you do in the morning as soon as your eyes open, is you write that down. You write your vision and you write your goals, and you write that in the morning. It's going to take you maybe 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
And then the last thing you do at night is, once again, you write your vision and you write your goals. First thing in the morning, last thing at night. And if you did that consistently, you will start to see changes. I would say within 2 weeks, you're going to see some remarkable changes in your world.
I totally believe that. And some of these people I speak with, they will often ask me, it's like I'm telling them, it's like, we literally just sent a PSA today, a small deal, it's a 76 unit, $3 million deal. They're in shock and they're in awe. How'd you do that? Oh my God. It's like, they just wake up and just do this, guys. It took a lot of work to get there. But part of it is what you're saying. I have a vision for myself, And I do my daily affirmations that support that vision. And that's where it all begins. It isn't just the mechanical aspect of things. It all starts in the mind. It all begins with the mindset. Everything
Right.
begins with the mindset. Because the other two components, the infrastructure and process component, infrastructure is once you define what supports that vision, like you said earlier, you can find mechanics around that to get that built.
Right.
So it's not really that difficult. So the process side of things too is probably one of the more important aspects as far as scaling it out and growing it. That's really the biggest component that would help you really support adding 100 units at a time without stressing the system too much.
Right. You made a couple real good points there. To your listeners, we all have head trash. We've all got head trash.
Yep.
And what you're nodding your head, and I'm going, yeah, because we've all got those things. Like, how do I feel like I should be a best-selling author? Like, how do you dare? And right now I'm like neck and neck 1 and 2 with the Bigger Pockets guys. And I'm like, man, these guys have been doing it for a long time. They're really successful, but like, I belong here. And as soon as you say, I belong, and you own it, man, it is so powerful. So if you're out there going, yeah, but those are guys that are different, they're educated, you can make any excuse. You can go, yeah, they're educated, they've got this, they've got that behind them. I don't know. I just don't trust me. You and I have the same head trash.
Yeah.
It creeps in and it is like a cancer. And you have got to be vigilant, because the minute that starts to creep in, you've got to find another way to put that out of your mindset, because it'll eat away from you, or it'll eat away at you. One other thing that you said real fast, I want to make sure that I make this point. The vision, infrastructure, process paradigm. So when you have bad infrastructure, you're going to have to make up for bad infrastructure with process. And the process almost always ends up being you doing the work, right? So I'll use a really, really simple example. So let's pretend that you are trying to run a McDonald's without a point of sale system. Okay. The point of sale system, I will say, is an infrastructure. So if you're trying to run a busy McDonald's, what are your options? Well, you have a cash register and you have to accept cash, or maybe a knuckle buster, credit card machine, something like that. The old school ones when you run the slips back and forth. That's super, super labor intensive, right? So you're going to have more people, or you doing a lot of the extra work, because you have bad infrastructure. Once you have better infrastructure, then it allows you to scale. I would really recommend that when you're looking at things, it's not so much, it is definitely process, but the infrastructure is where you're going to be able to scale. That's what's going to give you your time freedom. So that's why it goes in that order: vision, infrastructure, then process. Because if you're not building an infrastructure that's scalable, you're going to end up having to substitute a lot of broken infrastructure for process, and you're going to be the one that's doing all the process work.
That's right. So another aspect when we're talking about time is also adding value. So the ability to actually manage a deal and add significant amounts of value is super important. Of course, landlording does that, so maybe you can talk about how landlording provides a competitive edge when it comes to an acquisition, meaning if you're running it the way that you've described, by implementing some of these processes, you're increasing the overall NOI of that deal, right? Conceivably, you're improving it, and it's going to drive the overall value. So that's why some of the material in here is it's phenomenal stuff, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And I often hear, when I have these conversations with people in, the real estate space, whatever they're doing, is, I'll say to them, do you currently own rental property? Like, yeah, I own a couple, or this or that. I'm like, okay, yeah. So what's your process for that? I'm just curious. I'm always willing to learn. I think I'm probably about as, I would consider myself an expert in this area, but I'm always willing to hear what other people are doing. And I often get really, really good ideas, just from people who are maybe doing something a little bit differently. But they say, well, once I get to 10, I'm just going to turn it over to a property manager and then I'll be done. And I look at them like, wow. And I think that is really good in theory. But I work with a lot of property managers as a landlord coach, and most of them are struggling, and most of them don't make money. And most of them are grossly ineffective, and some bordering on incompetent. And I say that working again with them, And there's some that are, I mean, and I think they're good people. Don't get me wrong. I think that they're very good people mostly, but they're so constrained by bad infrastructure and bad process that they don't know what end is up. So I said, okay, so you're experiencing this problem as a landlord, right? And they go, oh yes, okay. So the problems are whatever. You can fill in the blank. We all know what those problems look like. I said, so how do you think a property manager gets it better when they're adding a whole other layer of complexity to the transaction by adding you as the owner to the mix? Keep in mind, it's not just tenants and vendors. Now it's tenants, vendors, and owners, right? So you've got levels of complexity there that are just hard to get your head around. And you seem to think that a property manager is going to have it better because you're just going to turn it over to them, quote unquote. That makes no sense. And most property managers really do struggle. They all say that they want to scale. They all say they want to grow. But, they're like, yeah, 10x, 10x. And I'm like, man, you are not ready for 2x, let alone 10x. and that's the thing. So I will say this, property management companies are in the business to make money. And they're going to make money. And somehow you thinking that, oh, they're going to just collect the rent and just do the maintenance and stuff like that, and they're not going to make money on it, you're running a fool's errand again. I mean, if you buy now, don't get me wrong, if you're buying the property cheap enough where you can bake that in the cake, that's great. But that's not that common.
That's right.
So you have to make sure that you're understanding what your risks are by getting into a property management company. So if I can make a quick analogy to bring this home, because most of the property management companies, the thing that they are getting most criticism for, most people say that they're bad at communicating, right? The communication piece is lacking. And where I will tell you this, most communication issues in any company are either problems with infrastructure or problems with process. When you have a bad infrastructure or bad process, communication is not the problem. Communication is the symptom of the problem. So when they go and they do maintenance work on a property and they don't communicate that with you, that's bad infrastructure, or someone didn't follow the process. So if your listeners have someone who is managing their property now and they're having communication issues, I would challenge you that it's going to be a problem with either infrastructure or process.
Yes. It's funny too, when you were talking earlier about just hire a property manager, there's such a focus on, well, it's going to be a 10% or 5%. They're going to charge me only 5%. That's cheap. That's nothing. And guys, they will steal from you. If you don't treat them right, they will steal from you.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying they're going to go reach into your pocket and take money from you, but what I mean is that they won't do a good enough job by you.
Right.
Is what it is. And I mean, and I'm not trying to make a blanket statement here, so don't hate on me for some property managers listening.
Well, I'm a property manager. I mean, I manage properties. So I hear exactly what you're saying. I mean, we oversee some management of some properties as well. But mostly we are really, really big on transparency, making sure that they understand what the transaction is and understanding what it's going to cost going in. And doing video inspections before and after. We use so many video inspections of properties because most of our property owners live out of town. They live out of this. I mean, most of them, hell, a good chunk of them live out of the country. So we want to make sure that they have a mechanism to do that. And if your property manager doesn't have that sort of mechanism, I mean, it's tough. You really need to make sure that they're doing right by you.
And that's probably one of the biggest beefs that I found is so far, many of the property managers that I've spoken to don't actually do that kind of stuff, or they lack when it comes to customer service, right? And I mean, I know that customer service is how should I say, it's an overused term, but I mean, in your book, you talk a high degree around customer service. So aside from doing the videos of the units, and when the tenant moves in, there's a little basket with like a welcome basket, $10, all in. But even down to answering the phone when they call, and not being snotty about it. That's going to be that's so important. I mean, now with all this chatter of an economic slowdown, what are your thoughts around the customer service as far as the operation of the deal is concerned? Then, like, how important does that become if it's not already important now?
Yeah, it's everything, because that's where people are going to be loyal to where they feel like that people have taken care of them. Let me frame this a different way, because customer service, I've never heard of someone say, I work with a lot of different, or around a lot of different investors who are also small business owners. They may own a dry cleaner or whatever. And if I ask them the question, what differentiates you from the competition? They almost, it's our customer service. Our customer service is so good, right? I've never heard anybody say our customer service is terrible and we own it, right? Like it's just,
That's right.
Except Comcast. Maybe Comcast would say that. But sorry, Comcast, you just were bad forever. But they have worked at that because they realize how bad it was. And it's not, I'm going to say to you, it's not about good customer service or bad customer service. It's just about consistency. I can work with a company that is consistent. Even if they're consistently bad at something, I can fix, consistently bad. I cannot fix inconsistently bad. So the first thing that you really need to focus on is being consistent. And I will argue that most people will spend so much time on things that don't matter. For example, back when I was struggling, I would send out birthday cards to my residents. Now, granted, this is just me. I didn't have a big staff or anything like that. It was just, it was just me and maybe a bookkeeper on occasion that I would hire to help me out. But when I would send out these birthday cards, it was like, almost like, oh yeah, thanks for the birthday card, but I've got a refrigerator that hasn't been working for 3 weeks. Ouch.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you have time for a birthday card, but you don't have time to send someone over to fix my refrigerator. So that's why I would say, stop focusing on the things that don't necessarily matter. Now, granted, now in my business, we do send out that stuff, but we also make sure that everything else is done first. So those are the sorts of things that you have to eliminate. And a lot of people get so wound up on things that just don't matter. And I think a lot of that is because they have a very unclear vision for their future and they don't have core values set for their business. So the core values are really nothing more than the vision of the business, right? It's just the moral compass of the business that operates. So if I'm working with a property manager, I'll work on individual vision first, and then I'll work on the company's core values and the company's vision, the company's direction second. But it's all got to stem from core values and the vision for their future. So when they're not focusing on the right things, it's really easy to get lost. And that is so true in the real estate space because it's a very distractible business.
Absolutely. And by the way, guys, let's say, for instance, you're going to do the birthday card thing. Make sure that all your systems are in place to handle whatever issues the tenants have. Absolutely. Because the end goal is to reduce that turnover, right? By the way, right? Because, by sending out a $10 Amazon card once a year and keeping that person there, you're going to save $2,000 in turnover.
Right.
Very good. It just makes total sense to me.
Right. And I would even say it's got to be much more than that, but your point is well taken. It can't just be, they see you at the end of the year and you're asking for $20 more and you're giving a $10 gift card, but you want $20 more a month or something along those lines. It's a relationship business. And you have got to be intentional about how often you're reaching out to your residents. And I think we do a pretty good job at that. But of course, we could always be better. But I'm going to say this in a way that maybe some people might get offended by it, but you have to communicate to your residents the way that they want to be communicated to. You can't say, well, I sent them an email and therefore they should be happy enough with that. Like I sent them. Well, what if they're an older person that doesn't have email? That exists.
Right.
And surprisingly enough, if you send someone a handwritten card, oh my gosh, I don't care who you are. I don't care what age you are. Even millennials appreciate a handwritten card. And you're thinking, do they really? I'm like, yes, they do, because they've been marketed to in so many other ways. For them to pick up something that's not their telephone, that resonates with them in a way that is not, maybe the 40 and 50-year-olds in the crowd go, whatever. But even still, I've never sent out a card that's been handwritten that said, even if it was just something, hey, I hope you're well, been thinking of you, let us know if there's anything we can do to assist you, or to service you. Signed, Mark. Never have I ever heard someone reach back out to me and go, I was so offended by your handwritten note. It does not happen.
Right. That's right.
Imagine if you did that just once a quarter. And I'm telling you, it would make a huge impact on any business, not just one in real estate.
Yes. Now, what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen landlords make? Maybe two of them.
Yeah. I would say first and foremost is they don't value their time highly enough. They'll get into the business. They start trying to do it all themselves, whatever it is. And that's the problem with most entrepreneurs in general, because most entrepreneurs that I know are very creative. They're very smart. They can learn to do anything. But all of a sudden, it's like from shifting gears from 1 minute to doing bookkeeping and the banking, and then shifting it again the next minute to go fixing a washer or dryer and then shifting it again to going and negotiating a new lease with somebody. And that mental shifting back and forth is just exhausting. And that's where I see a lot of individual landlords make that mistake, whereas they just don't, focus on what you're good at. If you like doing the maintenance, do the maintenance, dude. Turn that stuff over to someone else. Or if you're great at bookkeeping, fantastic. You should probably not be doing the customer service end because it's a different skill set. And all of this stuff is really about getting people in place. And I'm not necessarily saying that you need to hire employees, but getting people in place that are going to be better fits for that position. And that's where I think most of the individual landlords, they don't scale because they're trying to do too much.
Yes. Okay. Now, what should I ask you that didn't know enough to ask?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, you're in the space. I mean, you kind of understand a lot of things, but I think from my perspective, if you're asking me a question, what you didn't know enough to ask, I would say no one needs a coach, but I will say that everybody out there can use one. And that doesn't necessarily need to be me. Yes, I'm the landlord coach, but I will say too, is I'm not the fit for everybody. There's just people I just flat won't work with because I don't feel that they're coachable. But in that space where I feel if you're not working with someone, now I work with coaches myself because I want to be better in terms of where I say, and I work with several different coaches in different aspects. But that's where if you're not in that space where you're not coaching other people, you wouldn't necessarily know to say, hey, is it a good idea for other people to have coaches? And I will tell you this. There's a reason why the NFL players have different coaches for strength. They have different coaches for their specific task in terms of what they do. They have, all these other types of coaches, right? These coaches that do certain things. What I would say is look at getting a coach that is going to get you to a better state of where you're trying to get to. And like I said, doesn't necessarily need to be me, but get someone that understands where you're trying to go and is going to challenge you on it and is not worried about acceptance or approval. You want to make sure that you've got someone that's going to challenge you and is going to make sure that if you're making a promise, that they're going to hold you accountable to that.
Nice. Excellent. Okay. So in this book, you covered everything from leasing to collections. So it seems like you nailed down everything on the landlording part. So what's next after this?
Well, I love to write. I really enjoy writing. That is something that I have really found my passion, and I fortunately have the time wealth to do that. So I find myself as I'm traveling from different places, doing different coaching or speaking engagements at different RIAs or different investment clubs, I find myself with a lot of time where I'm not able to connect to the internet. That's really where I like to write. So I'm actually looking at writing a book really more dialing into it's a little bit less real estate. In fact, it's probably significantly less real estate oriented, but really more about people creating their best life and having that ferocity of purpose where they understand the cumulative effect of the time value of effort. So if they're doing the right effort in the right direction for long enough, over a period of time, and you may not notice it right away, but you're going to get that hockey stick at some point. You're going to get the cumulative effect where you have that time value of effort. So I think that those are the sorts of books that I think that I really need to be writing to get to that community that I was talking about earlier. And I think there's a lot of people out there that they bought the book because they like the way I think, they like the things that I say, but it's like, but I'm not a real estate guy. I'm like, I understand. It's okay.
Yes. I look forward to checking it out. It's going to be great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into the bullet round. All right. So,
okay.
If you can give your 20-year-old self a word of advice, what would you say to him?
Number one, learn to value your free time. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. Fail and fail forward.
Yeah, good. What do you think about the next 5 years? What do they look like for your business?
I'm very excited. Right now, I'm hoarding cash. I see that there's lots of deals out there, but none that really wind my clock. So right now, I've been hoarding cash, and I think that's been a strategy that I'm going to be implementing for probably the next couple of years at least. I can't say 5 years, but a couple of years at least. That's what I'm looking at.
Very good. Very good. Now, what's your philosophy for life and success? Like, what keeps you motivated?
My vision. I mean, I'd be disingenuous if I didn't answer the question that way. But yeah, my vision for my future about building that community, building people, bringing people together, and helping us all grow. I think that's what we're all put here for. I think if you look at the tools that God gave us, I think that for free will and creativity, we were not put here to toil. We were put here for much greater things than what many of us are doing. So that's the big thing for me.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, guys. If you want to follow up with Mark, you can reach him at his website, landlordcoach.com. I'll include links to the book in the description, so definitely grab a copy. You're going to love it, all right? I hope you got a lot of insight in the importance of creating a vision for your future, because doing what you want and living the life on your own terms is the only way to be, all right? Thank you for your time, Mark. Greatly appreciate it.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. For more free podcasts, articles, videos, and resources, go to www.bulletproofcashflow.com.